All right, welcome everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into mandalas. You know those beautiful geometric designs? Well, we're about to find out that there's a lot more to them than just pretty pictures. And to help us out, we've got some excerpts from, you guessed it, Wikipedia. The mandala entry, to be precise, which gives us a nice mix of history, spiritual meanings, and even how mandalas are used today.
Yeah, it's really amazing how these geometric patterns, woven with all this powerful symbolism, can have such deep meaning across so many different cultures and spiritual traditions. That blend of geometry and symbolism is really at the heart of it, I think. It's what gives mandalas their power, a power that has, well, really transcended time and geographic boundaries.
Right, so let's start with the basics, shall we? What exactly is an mandala?
Well, the word itself comes from Sanskrit, and it means circle, which, when you look at them, makes sense. Right?
Yeah, definitely. But I have a feeling it's not just any circle, is it?
You got it. It's not just A and Y circle. It's how those symbols are arranged within that circular framework. That's what really makes it special, takes it beyond a basic shape, you know? And this idea of a circle as a sacred space, it pops up all over the place in so many cultures. I mean, that's just scratching the surface of how universal mandalas really are. You find them throughout history and tons of cultures. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Shinto, the list goes on.
So where should we begin? Well, Hinduism seems like a good place to start. Mandalas are a huge part of that ancient tradition, right?
Absolutely. And in Hinduism, you'll often hear these special types of mandalas called yantras.
Yantras. Okay, so what's the difference between a mandala and a yantra?
It's subtle but important. Both mandalas and yantras, they use these geometric patterns and symbolism, but a yantra tends to be smaller, more compact. They usually have a more limited color palette too, and get this, they can even be three-dimensional. Complexity to how they represent spiritual concepts.
So if I'm picturing this right, we've got a square with four T-shaped gates, and inside that square, a circle with a point right at the center.
You got it. And there's this real emphasis on radial balance. Everything comes from that center point. It's like visually representing energy flowing outward.
I see. It's like a visual representation of like creation or expansion.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting. Each yantra is thought to be unique, like representing the dwelling place of a specific deity.
Oh, wow. So each one is special in its own way.
Yep. And they're used in rituals and meditation to, kind of call upon the presence of that deity. So they're not just static images, they're more like dynamic tools for connecting with the divine and exploring your spirituality.
That's incredible. It's amazing how these visual symbols can become such powerful tools for spiritual practice. And the mandala itself, it shows up way back in the Rig Veda, one of the oldest Hindu scriptures, right?
That's right. We're talking ancient wisdom here. And it's not just the Rig Veda. Mandalas are a key part of any tantric tradition within Hinduism, really the most important visual form.
Wow. Fascinating. Okay. So are you ready for a change of pace? Because next we're moving into the world of Buddhist mandalas, and things get even more interesting here. They make mandalas out of, wait for it, sand.
Ah, yes, the sand mandalas. They're incredibly intricate, so detailed, but there's a catch. They're impermanent.
Impermanent? What do you mean?
Well, the monks, they create these sand mandalas with such care and detail, but then they ritually destroy them. It's a powerful way to visualize a core teaching in Buddhism, the impermanence of all things.
So they create these beautiful pieces of art only to destroy them. That's pretty deep.
It is, isn't it? It's a reminder that nothing lasts forever. Letting go of attachment is a key idea in Buddhist philosophy, and I think the sand mandala ritual is a way to really experience that letting go, like in a tangible, visceral way.
Yeah, it's like a meditation in action, right? The creation, the appreciation, and then the acceptance of its eventual disappearance. A beautiful metaphor for the cycle of life, really.
You got it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Buddhist mandalas. In Vajrayana Buddhism, they're essential to meditation and visualization practices. They're like visual aids, helping practitioners understand complex philosophical teachings.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Give me an example. Like, how can a mandala help someone visualize something as huge as the universe?
All right, picture this, Mount Meru. It's this sacred mountain in Buddhist cosmology, and it's right at the center of the mandala. And surrounding it, you have the continents, the oceans, mountains, basically the entire universe, all within this one geometric form.
So it's like a microcosm of the macrocosm, a way to understand how everything is connected.
Exactly. There's even a historical example, a silk tapestry from the Yuan dynasty that depicts this very concept.
Wow. So if you're meditating on a mandala representing Mount Meru, you're not just looking at a pretty design, you're engaging with a representation of the entire cosmos, trying to understand your place within it all.
And there's more. The outer circle of fire you often see in mandalas that symbolizes wisdom, and those 8 charnel grounds, they often depict those as a ring within the mandala. They're there to remind us of death and the impermanence of life. You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It keeps things grounded in the cycle of life and death.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even in the midst of beauty and complexity, there's this underlying truth about the nature of existence.
Right. And speaking of specific types of Buddhist mandalas, there's the mandala of the 5 Buddhas. Each Buddha represents a different aspect of enlightenment. It's almost like a guide to achieving your full potential, reaching your inner Buddha nature.
5 Buddhas, each with their own, unique energy and wisdom.
Yeah.
Are we seeing a theme here? It seems like mandalas are all about helping us understand these complex systems, whether it's the universe, the human mind, or the path to enlightenment.
You're definitely onto something, and it gets even more interesting with the mandala offering tradition in Tibetan Buddhism. They create these incredibly detailed mandalas with very specific symbolism, and it's like a symbolic offering of the entire universe.
Wow, that's incredible. An offering of the entire universe. And wait, I bet there are more, right? Buddhist mandalas show up in other types of Buddhism too.
You bet. We see mandalas everywhere. Like in Theravada Buddhism, there are mandalas representing everyday relationships. Then there are flower rituals in the Shingon school. And Moji mandala, these are mandalas made with characters in Nichiren Buddhism. And even in Pure Land Buddhism, where they visualize these pure lands, it's remarkable.
Mind officially blown. Ancient rituals, sand paintings, complex philosophical teachings. It seems like these mandalas are truly multifaceted. But before we go too far, we've got one more stop on our mandala journey. And it might surprise you. We're going to talk about Carl Jung.
Yep. Time to bridge the gap between these ancient Eastern traditions and Western psychology. Ready for this?
Oh, absolutely. I'm really interested to hear how Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, fits into all of this. This is where things could get really interesting, I think, bringing those ancient concepts into the modern world.
Well, you see, Jung, as he was exploring the unconscious mind, he kept finding this circle motif. It seemed like it was everywhere. Ancient art, dreams of his patients, even his own personal journals.
Circles everywhere, like some kind of universal language of the psyche, maybe?
That's exactly it. Jung realized that these circles, he called them mandalas, weren't just random shapes. He saw them as symbols, representations of the self, that, core, unified part of our personality.
Okay, so not just any circle, but a circle with, deep personal meaning. What kind of meaning are we talking about here?
Well, Jung thought that people often create mandalas during times of big personal growth, like a symbol of psychological integration, almost as if the psyche is trying to find balance, wholeness, and the mandala is like the outward expression of that process.
So, if you're going through a big life transition, maybe doing some intense inner work, you might start drawing these circles as a way to process things, Integrate those experiences into your sense of self. Have you ever noticed yourself doodling circles during times like that?
It's certainly something to pay attention to. And for Jung, it wasn't just a theory, He actually observed this in his own life. In his autobiography, he even mentions sketching circular drawings every morning. And he said those drawings kind of reflected his inner state at that time.
So he was using mandalas as a tool for self-discovery, like a visual journal of his inner world.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a quote from Jung that I think really sums it up. I saw that everything, all the paths I had been following, all the steps I had taken, were leading back to a single point, namely to midpoint. It became increasingly plain to me that the mandala is the center. It is the exponent of all paths. It is the path to the center, to individuation.
Wow, that's powerful. So for Jung, the mandala was like a symbol of this journey towards becoming whole, becoming your true self.
And that journey, for Jung, it was all about bringing together the conscious and unconscious parts of ourselves. And the mandala, with its center point and all those patterns radiating outwards, becomes this visual metaphor for that process.
I could definitely see why Jung was so drawn to mandalas. It's like they provide this way to look at the psyche, the self, with all its complexity and contradictions as a whole, like a snapshot of our inner landscape.
And remember, for Jung, the unconscious wasn't just some abstract idea. It was this dynamic force shaping our thoughts, our feelings, our actions. So mandalas, in a way, offered a method of interacting with that force, bringing it into consciousness where we can work with it.
It's like having a conversation with your unconscious through the mandala. That could lead to some real breakthroughs, don't you think?
For sure. Uncovering hidden patterns, working through inner conflicts, even finding new creativity and inspiration.
Okay, so we've got these ancient spiritual practices using mandalas, and then Jung brings them into modern psychology. It's like two different worlds coming together, offering different perspectives on this powerful symbol.
And the story doesn't end there. Jung's work inspired a whole bunch of explorations into the therapeutic potential of mandalas. For instance, there's Joan Kellogg, an American art therapist. She created something called the MRI card test, which uses mandalas to, assess someone's personality and emotional state.
Hold on, so you're saying that by looking at someone's mandala, you can gain insight into their inner world?
It's wild, right? But that's the power of mandalas. They can reveal what's hidden beneath the surface, like a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, helping us understand parts of ourselves we might not even be aware of.
You know, now that we've been talking about them for a while, I'm starting to see mandalas everywhere. From ancient temples to modern art therapy.
Yeah.
It's incredible how they've influenced human history.
And they're still relevant today. We
Yeah.
see them in art, design, education, personal development. It's become a symbol of wholeness, balance, and that interconnectedness of all things.
I think it's safe to say that we've uncovered some pretty fascinating stuff about mandalas. But before we move on, I have to ask, why should our listener care about any of this? I mean, why are these ancient circles and their psychological meaning important to us today?
That's the million-dollar question. I think it comes down to the potential that mandalas have to help us connect with ourselves on a deeper level. Whether you're creating them, meditating on them, or just appreciating their beauty, they give you a way to tap into your inner wisdom, to explore that vast landscape of your psyche. And that, I believe, is something truly valuable in the world today.
I love that. It's like an invitation to embark on a journey of self-discovery, to explore those uncharted territories within.
Exactly. And that journey can lead to greater self-awareness, personal growth, and even a sense of peace and wholeness.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as a circle could have so much potential.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Mandalas show us that even in the simplest forms, there's incredible complexity and depth, and that potential for discovery, it's within each of us.
Well said. This conversation has definitely inspired me to create my own mandala. I'm curious to see what comes out of my subconscious.
That's a fantastic idea. It's a great way to put everything we've talked about into practice.
So, shall we move on to the final part of our deep dive? Explore what all of this means for us right here, right now. So we've really explored a lot about mandalas, haven't we? From ancient Eastern traditions to modern psychology, we've seen how these intricate designs have such deep spiritual and psychological significance. But I guess the question is, how do we actually apply what we've learned about mandalas to our own lives? It can't all just be history and theory, can it?
Right. I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? The great thing about mandalas is that they're not just some ancient relic or esoteric symbol. They have these very real benefits that anyone can tap into, no matter your background or what you believe in.
Okay, so how do we do that then? How do we bridge the gap between these ancient symbols and our modern lives, which, let's face it, could be pretty chaotic?
Well, remember how we were talking about how mandalas are all about creating order out of chaos, finding balance in the middle of all this complexity? I think that's something we could all use a little more of these days.
Yeah, for sure, especially in today's world where we're just bombarded with information and stimulation constantly. It's like our minds are these swirling vortexes of thoughts and emotions. How can mandalas help us find some peace in all that?
Well, think about the mandala as a visual anchor, a focal point for your attention, whether you're actually creating a mandala or just coloring one in or even just contemplating its form,
Right.
It's all about centering yourself, finding a little bit of stillness.
It's like hitting the pause button on all that mental noise, isn't it? Giving us a chance to step back and see our inner world a little more clearly.
Exactly. And in that space of stillness and observation, well, that's where we can start to make sense of the chaos and see the patterns and connections that we might have missed before.
So it's not about ignoring the chaos. It's more like learning how to navigate it, with a bit more awareness, maybe a bit more skill.
Yeah.
It's almost like the mandala is a training ground for the mind.
I like that. That's a great analogy. And here's another interesting thing to think about. Mandalas, by their very design, are about wholeness. They include all directions, all elements, all aspects of experience. And I think that can be such a powerful reminder to us that even with all our imperfections and challenges, there's still this fundamental wholeness, a completeness that's always there.
It's like that saying, the universe is within you. The mandala just makes it visual, this interconnectedness, this unity that's both inside us and all around us.
Nicely put. And I think that's such a profound message, especially now with all the craziness of modern life. The mandala reminds us that we're not just broken pieces. We're part of something so much bigger, something interconnected and whole.
So whether you're looking for spiritual insight, psychological understanding, or even just a moment of peace and reflection, the mandala can be like a pathway in.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of mandalas, we want to leave you with this question. If you were to create your own mandala, what would it look like? What colors and shapes and symbols would you use to show your own inner world? What would you discover about yourself and your own unique journey through the process of creating it?
There really are no right or wrong answers. The beauty of mandalas is that they reflect the unique, ever-changing nature of each and every person. So go out there, explore, and see what you discover.
Until next time, may your journeys be filled with meaning, balance, and a deep sense of inner peace.
All right, so today we are going to dive into the world of Batman.
Oh, yeah.
And we are going to use his Wikipedia page as our source.
Sounds good.
And we're going to look at all sorts of things, like his
Yeah.
origins and how he's changed over the years.
I think that will be really interesting.
Yeah, even if you're not like a huge comic book fan, I think that Batman's just such a big cultural icon that, like, I don't know, it's fascinating to kind of see how this guy has evolved.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because his story has resonated for decades.
Yeah.
And it's not just because he's got cool gadgets or anything like that.
That's
Like,
right.
we're going to uncover why this character, even without any superpowers, has really gripped our collective imagination for so long.
That's so true. And thinking about it, like, why did they give him superpowers? I mean, Superman can fly and Wonder Woman has, super strength, but Batman's just like a guy.
Right.
A really skilled and wealthy guy, but still just a guy.
I think that's the brilliance of it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
The fact that he has no superpowers makes his achievements even more impressive. When you think about it, like, he stands shoulder to shoulder with these, like, godlike beings,
Yeah.
relying purely on his intellect, his strategy, and of course, his wealth.
Yeah.
It kind of speaks to the potential within us all
Right.
that we don't need supernatural abilities to make a difference in the world.
Okay. Yeah. I'm starting to see it.
Yeah.
So let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Where did this whole, like, superhuman without superpowers thing even start?
Well, Batman's journey began in 1939
Okay.
with Detective Comics, #27,
Okay.
created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Right.
And he was very much a product of his time, riding the wave of that Pulp Fiction popularity.
Right.
And, Superman had just debuted like a year before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So early Batman was kind of like the Shadow with a bat costume.
Mm.
Was he always like the dark and brooding figure that we know today?
Not exactly.
Okay.
He was definitely darker than Superman.
Okay.
He was like this ruthless vigilante taking down criminals,
Oh, wow.
often with lethal force, even.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the brooding and psychologically complex hero that we know today, that kind of emerged over time.
So was there like a specific moment that marked that shift, or was it more of a gradual evolution?
Well, there are some definite turning points, and one of the biggest was the introduction of Robin in 1940.
Oh, right.
Suddenly, Batman wasn't just about vengeance anymore.
Right.
He had someone to protect,
Yeah.
this young ward who looked up to him.
Yeah.
It added a whole new layer of responsibility and
Mm.
forced him to really confront the consequences of his actions in a different way.
Yeah. That makes sense having like a sidekick. Like Robin definitely changes the dynamic.
Right.
But didn't things take a little bit of a detour in the 1960s?
Yes.
I remember like a very colorful interpretation of Batman.
Yes, the 1960s Batman TV series.
Yes.
It definitely embraced like a very campy, over-the-top aesthetic.
Right?
POW, BAM, all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And for a while, that lighter, almost comedic tone kind of seeped into the comics as well.
Oh, wow.
It's easy to dismiss it now, but it really reflected a different cultural moment,
Yeah.
A time when superheroes were seen as more like lighthearted, family-friendly entertainment.
Okay, so we had like the dark, gritty vigilante,
Right.
then a brief detour into like campy territory.
Yeah.
But then how did we get back to like the brooding Batman we know and love today.
Well, the pendulum kind of swung back in the 1970s and 80s
Right, yeah.
with a return to Batman's darker roots.
Right.
Writers like Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams,
Yeah.
they stripped away the camp and brought back the psychological complexity,
Okay.
exploring these themes of justice and trauma and the cost of vigilantism.
And then, of course, there's Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns in 1986.
Absolutely.
It feels like such a landmark moment.
It was.
Almost like a reboot of the character for like a whole new generation.
Yeah, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
It presented this dystopian future
Right.
with this aging Batman grappling with his demons
Yeah.
and a world on the brink of collapse. It was dark, it was gritty, and so incredibly influential.
Yeah.
It really paved the way for the more psychologically driven interpretations that we see in, like, modern Batman stories.
So we've talked about like the evolution of Batman the hero.
All right.
But what about Bruce Wayne?
Yeah.
Is he just like a boring rich guy, or is there more to him?
Bruce Wayne is far from boring.
Okay.
On the surface, he's this wealthy playboy,
Yeah.
throwing lavish parties and cultivating this carefree image.
Right.
But that's all a carefully crafted mask.
Okay.
It's a brilliant misdirection tactic that allows him to operate unseen.
Oh, wow.
It's a key part of his strategy.
Right.
Almost the opposite of Superman, where Clark Kent is like the true identity.
Oh, then are you saying that Bruce Wayne's Playboy persona is more than just hiding his identity?
Exactly.
Oh.
It's like a strategic tool.
Wow.
It allows him to move within like Gotham's elite, gathering information, diverting suspicion.
So nobody suspects the carefree billionaire is the one striking fear into the hearts of criminals at night?
Right.
Wow. That puts a whole new spin on Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So this mask he wears is Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Is that all part of his coping mechanism for the trauma of his parents' murder?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne is like the bedrock of Batman's entire story.
Right.
It's like the defining event that shaped him,
Yeah.
the unhealed wound that drives his relentless pursuit of justice.
It's not just about vengeance, though, right?
It's not just about
But that's
vengeance.
not
It's
it.
about preventing others from experiencing the same pain that he endured.
So it's not just about punching criminals. It's about, like, protecting the innocent.
Exactly.
About making sure nobody else has to go through what he went through.
Right.
That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is, and different writers have explored the psychological impact of that trauma in various ways.
Oh, okay.
Some focus on the guilt that Bruce carries,
Yeah.
the feeling that he could have somehow prevented his parents' deaths. Others delve into the rage and the thirst for vengeance
Yeah.
that really consumed him in his early years as Batman.
Oh, wow. So it really depends on the writer and the story.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating how, like, that one event, the murder of his parents, has been interpreted and reinterpreted over the decades.
Yeah.
Like, it really reflects how our understanding of trauma and grief and even just, like, the motivations for heroism have evolved over time, you know?
You know, it's like, even though I know the basic story, hearing you talk about all these different interpretations makes me want to, like, revisit those comics
Right.
and see how those, like, nuances actually play out.
Yeah. Definitely.
Really?
I definitely encourage you to do that.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how the same event can take on such different shades of meaning depending on, like, the writer, the artist, even, like, the cultural context of the time, you know?
Speaking of cultural context, seems Batman has always kind of been a reflection of the times. You know, like the darker, grittier Batman kind of emerged during periods of like social unrest or anxiety.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Batman is totally a mirror to society.
Yeah.
He evolves as our understanding of justice, trauma, heroism, all that stuff evolves.
Yeah.
And in times of uncertainty, we kind of crave those heroes who can confront the darkness, even if it means, like, operating outside the lines a little bit.
Right. Yeah. But even with all the darkness, Batman always maintains this like unwavering moral compass, you know?
Right.
He's a vigilante, sure, but he's ultimately driven by a desire to protect the innocent.
That's the paradox of Batman, isn't it?
Yeah.
He operates in the shadows,
Yeah.
often blurring the lines between hero and vigilante.
Yeah.
He uses fear and intimidation, but he never kills. He's constantly pushing the boundaries of the law,
Yeah.
but he always remains committed to justice.
It makes you think about like the complexities of morality.
Right.
Like, what does it even mean to be a hero in a world where the lines are so blurred?
Yeah.
It's not always so black and white.
Right. Exactly. Batman really challenges us to think about those gray areas, like those difficult choices that heroes sometimes have to make.
Right.
He reminds us that the world isn't simple. And
Yeah.
sometimes the right path isn't always clear.
It's interesting, though, how Batman's methods sometimes put him at odds with, like, traditional law enforcement.
Right.
Yet he has this very unique relationship with Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, that relationship is so interesting. It's
Yeah.
one of the most intriguing aspects of like the whole Batman mythos.
Yeah.
Gordon represents that established order, the rule of law.
Right.
But he recognizes that Gotham needs someone like Batman.
Yeah.
Someone willing to operate outside those rules to confront the forces that threaten the city.
It's like they have this unspoken understanding,
Right.
a shared goal, even though their methods are often, like, totally at odds with each other.
Precisely, they need each other.
Yeah.
Gordon provides Batman with a level of legitimacy,
Yeah.
access to information,
Right.
and sometimes even like a blind eye to his methods.
Right. And Batman, in turn, provides Gordon with, like, a weapon against the criminals that the police can't always touch.
But even with Gordon as an ally, Batman often works alone.
Mm.
He's kind of like the ultimate loner, right?
Well, not entirely alone.
Okay.
Remember, he has the Bat family.
Oh, right, yeah.
Alfred, Robin, Batgirl.
Yeah,
A whole host of other allies who assist him in his crusade.
right, the Bat family.
Yeah.
It's amazing how this like lone vigilante ended up with a whole network of allies,
Right.
each with their own like skills and motivations.
It speaks to the evolution of the character.
Yeah.
And I think even to our own evolving understanding of heroism.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we don't see heroes as solely solitary figures anymore.
Right.
We recognize the importance of community,
Yeah.
of having people to rely on,
Right.
to share the burden with.
And when you think about it, each member of the Bat family brings something unique to the table.
Right.
They challenge Batman, they support him,
Yeah.
and sometimes they even push him to be like a better hero. Take Robin, for instance.
Oh.
He's not just a sidekick.
Right.
He represents hope, innocence,
Yeah.
the potential for redemption even.
Yeah.
He reminds Batman of the humanity he's fighting to protect,
Right.
the reason he endures all that darkness.
And then you have Batgirl,
right.
a skilled detective and fighter in her own right.
Absolutely.
She represents a different kind of strength,
Yeah.
like a more independent spirit.
Totally.
And she challenges Batman's often, like, rigid worldview.
Exactly.
And let's not forget Alfred Pennyworth,
right.
the ever-loyal butler,
Yeah.
who's more than just a servant.
Right.
He's a confidant, a father figure.
Yeah.
Like, the voice of reason in Batman's life.
Totally.
You know, I never really thought about it this way, but the Bat family adds so much depth and complexity to Batman's story.
Right.
It's not just about one man fighting crime.
Exactly.
It's about this whole network of people,
Yeah.
each with their own motivations,
Right.
working together to try and make Gotham a better place.
And I think that resonates with us as like readers or viewers.
Yeah.
We crave that connection,
Yeah.
that community,
Right.
the sense that we're not alone in our struggles.
Yeah.
And the Bat family, in its own kind of like dysfunctional way, really embodies that.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly complex hero.
Right.
This supporting cast of allies.
Yeah.
This city that's just plagued by crime.
Right.
But let's talk about the villains.
Yeah.
Batman's rogues gallery is legendary,
It is.
almost as iconic as the hero himself.
Oh, absolutely. You
Yeah.
can't have a great hero without equally compelling villains.
Yeah.
And Batman's villains, they're like a reflection of his own psyche,
Right.
his own fears, his own struggles. They challenge him intellectually,
Yeah.
morally, often physically,
Yeah.
forcing him to confront that darkness within himself.
It's like each villain represents a different aspect of Batman's personality.
Right.
Or a different facet of the criminal mind.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You have like the Joker, the embodiment of chaos and anarchy,
Yeah.
a constant reminder of the fragility of order
Yeah.
and the ever-present threat of madness.
Then there's the Penguin,
Right.
this cunning criminal mastermind who represents, like, the corruption and the greed that just festers within Gotham's elite.
And Catwoman,
Right.
the skilled thief who walks that line between hero and villain,
Yeah.
always challenging Batman's perception of right and wrong.
Exactly.
Each villain kind of pushes Batman in different ways,
Right.
forcing him to confront his own vulnerabilities
Yeah.
and to constantly adapt his strategies.
And of course, we can't talk about Batman's villains without mentioning the Joker.
Right.
He is the ultimate nemesis,
He is.
the one who always seems to get under Batman's skin.
The Joker is more than just a villain.
Yeah.
He's like a force of nature,
Yeah.
an agent of chaos who revels in the destruction of order and reason.
Yeah.
He's the antithesis of everything that Batman stands for.
Right.
And their conflict is like this battle for the very soul of Gotham.
I've always been so fascinated by their relationship.
Yeah.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Just locked in this, like, eternal struggle.
It's a dynamic that's been explored in countless comics, movies, TV shows.
Yeah.
It never gets old.
Right.
The Joker represents the ultimate challenge to Batman's entire worldview.
Yeah.
A constant reminder that even the best-laid plans can be undone by chaos and madness.
And even though Batman has faced down countless villains over the years,
Right.
it's the Joker who seems to, like, push him to his absolute limits.
Yeah.
To test his resolve and force him to confront that darkness within himself.
Their battles are legendary.
Yeah.
Often blurring the lines between good and evil, order and chaos.
Right.
And even though Batman always manages to prevail,
Yeah.
it's never a clear victory, you know?
Right.
The Joker always leaves his mark, like
Yeah.
a reminder that the fight for Gotham's soul is never truly over.
It's almost like the Joker is a reflection of the chaos that always seems to lurk beneath the surface of Gotham.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, no matter how many times Batman tries to impose order,
Right.
there's always this, like, underlying sense of unease.
Yeah.
Like, the city itself is somehow, like, infected.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Gotham is almost a character in itself.
Right.
Like a dark reflection of the human psyche,
Yeah.
where the shadows run deep and the line between sanity and madness is constantly shifting, you know?
Okay, so we've got the hero, the allies, the villains in the city.
Yeah.
But there's one more element we need to talk about.
Okay.
The Batcave.
Right.
It's more than just a hideout, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like this symbolic representation of Batman's preparedness,
Right.
his resources, his dedication to this whole crusade.
It's almost like his ultimate toolbox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you walk into that cave and you see the Batmobile, the Batcomputer,
Yeah.
all those gadgets and suits.
Yeah.
It's a visual reminder of his commitment, his meticulous planning, and his technological prowess.
Like if you're a villain in Gotham,
Yeah.
just the idea of the Batcave should be terrifying. You know, he's down there analyzing every move.
Yeah.
Constantly one step ahead.
Exactly. It's not just about the physical space.
Yeah.
It's about the psychological impact.
Right.
It represents Batman's ability to anticipate, to outmaneuver,
Yeah.
to always be prepared for whatever his enemies throw at him.
And then there's the bat signal.
Right.
It's such a simple concept.
Yeah.
But it's so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
That image of the bat symbol projected against the night sky.
Right.
It's like a beacon of hope for the people of Gotham and a warning to the criminals.
The bat signal is almost like a visual representation of the pact between Batman and the city.
Right.
He's a vigilante operating outside the law, but that signal represents a level of trust,
Yeah.
an understanding that even though his methods are unorthodox, he's ultimately on their side.
But isn't it a bit strange?
Hmm.
Like the police are essentially calling on a masked vigilante to help them fight crime.
It speaks to the complexities of Batman's relationship with the authorities.
Yeah.
He's not a sanctioned hero.
Right.
He operates in a moral gray area,
Yeah.
but the bat signal represents a grudging acceptance, a recognition that sometimes the traditional methods just aren't enough.
And it makes for some great storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
The tension between Batman and the police.
Right.
The question of whether they can truly trust him.
Yeah.
It adds another layer of intrigue to the whole mythos.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It keeps us guessing,
I
keeps
like-
us questioning the lines between right and wrong, hero and vigilante.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Batman continues to fascinate us.
Right.
He challenges our assumptions about justice,
Yeah.
about the nature of heroism,
Yeah.
and about the darkness that lurks within us all.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored his origins, his evolution, the psychology behind the mask,
Right.
his relationships with his allies and his enemies,
Yeah.
and the symbolic significance of everything from the Batcave to the Bat Signal.
But ultimately, Batman's story is about more than just gadgets and villains. It's about the struggle for justice in a world where the lines are blurred, where good and evil are constantly at odds.
It's about facing our fears, overcoming adversity,
Right.
finding the strength to fight for what we believe in, even when the odds are stacked against us.
And it's about the enduring power of hope.
Yeah.
The belief that even in the darkest of times, there are those who are willing to stand up for what's right, even if it means operating in the shadows.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for you, the listener.
Okay.
Which version of Batman resonates most with you? Is it the dark, brooding vigilante, the brilliant detective, the symbol of hope in a city consumed by darkness,
This deep dive has only scratched the surface.
Right.
There's a wealth of stories out there waiting to be explored. Comics, movies, TV shows, video games.
Yeah.
Each one offers a different perspective on this complex and enduring character.
So keep diving, keep exploring, and keep asking yourself, what does Batman mean to you?
Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive on dervishes.
All right.
So we're diving into the world of dervishes today.
Yes.
And as always, our source material is Wikipedia,
Right.
a stack of Wikipedia articles. And, you've probably seen the whirling, heard the term.
Yeah.
But what does it all really mean?
Yeah.
So today we're going to go beyond just the surface
Right.
to explore who dervishes are, what they believe,
Yeah.
and how they fit into the bigger picture of Islam.
Okay.
So to kick things off, I think it's helpful to start with a basic definition.
Right.
Because like I said, most people, when they think of dervishes,
Yeah.
they think of whirling.
Yeah.
But it's obviously much more than that.
Yeah, it's a much broader term.
Right.
It's rooted in Persian, and at its core, it refers to someone who's on a Sufi Muslim ascetic path.
Okay. An ascetic path.
Yeah, so think of it like a specific path within Islam
Right.
that's really focused on experiencing God directly,
Okay.
rather than just through studying texts or rituals.
So it's more experiential.
Yeah, more mystical.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article mentions something about dervishes and material poverty.
Right.
How does that fit in?
Yeah, it's a common misconception that being a dervish just means being poor.
Okay.
While many dervishes do take vows of poverty and live as mendicants,
Right.
the true essence lies in what's referred to as inner poverty.
Inner poverty.
Yeah.
That sounds a little paradoxical.
It is.
Okay.
And that's where the beauty lies.
Right.
It's about detaching from material desire,
Okay.
achieving a state of inner freedom from the need to possess.
Okay.
And Saadi, the Persian poet
Right.
who lived as a dervish, describes it beautifully.
Okay.
He says, of what avail is frock or rosary or clouded garment?
Right.
Keep thyself but free from evil deeds.
Okay.
It will not need for thee to wear the cap of felt,
Okay.
a darwish be in heart,
Uh-huh.
and wear the cap of Tartary.
So it's really about what's inside the state of your heart.
Absolutely.
Rather than outward appearances or possessions.
Precise.
Which actually resonates with a lot of minimalist philosophies today.
Yes,
Very
definitely.
interesting.
Yeah.
And, to illustrate this idea of inner poverty,
Yeah.
Rumi, the famous Sufi mystic,
Right.
offers a really powerful analogy.
He does.
He says, water that's poured inside will sink the boat,
Yes.
while water underneath keeps it afloat.
Right. So he's comparing material possessions
Okay.
to that water inside the boat,
Okay.
weighing it down, causing it to sink.
So by emptying yourself of those those attachments,
Right.
you become lighter, more buoyant.
Precisely.
Okay.
And he continues the quote by saying, driving wealth from his heart to keep it pure, King Solomon preferred the title poor.
Okay.
That sealed jar in the stormy sea out there floats on the waves because it's full of air.
Okay.
When you've the air of dervishhood inside, you'll float above the world and there abide.
Wow.
So.
That imagery is so vivid
It is.
that detaching from desire allows you to rise above the world, almost like achieving a sense of inner peace amidst the chaos.
Exactly. And this brings us to
Yeah.
the image that most people have when they hear the word dervish.
Yeah.
The whirling.
Right. The iconic spinning dervish. I've
Yeah.
always been curious about that. Is that something that all dervishes do?
Well,
Or is it specific to a certain order? Or
yeah, it's certainly the most well-known image.
Right.
Thanks in part to the Mevlevi order in Turkey.
Okay.
But it's not a universal practice.
Okay.
The whirling is actually part of a formal ceremony called the Sama,
Okay.
and its purpose is to help participants reach a state of religious ecstasy.
So it's not just spinning for the sake of spinning.
No,
There's a deeper purpose behind it.
there is.
Okay.
And it's crucial to remember that other dervish orders have their own unique practices.
Right.
Whirling is just one path,
Hmm.
not the defining characteristic of being a dervish.
So if whirling isn't the defining feature, what is?
Right.
Like what ties all these different dervish groups together?
At the core of all dervish orders
Yeah.
lies the pursuit of a direct personal experience of God.
Okay.
a more mystical approach to Islam.
Okay.
It's not just about studying the Quran.
Right.
It's about seeking union with the divine through practices that transcend the intellect.
That makes sense. And the Wikipedia article mentioned orders upon orders.
It did.
How many are we actually talking about here?
It's really quite remarkable.
Okay.
There are countless dervish orders,
Wow.
each with its own lineage, stemming from specific saints or teachers within Islam.
Okay.
They've spread throughout the Middle East, Africa, and Asia over centuries,
Right.
evolving and adapting to different cultures along the way.
So a very diverse...
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Um,
Could you give us some examples of these orders just to get a taste of the variety?
of course.
Yeah.
For example, the Bektashis,
Okay.
a historically significant order, were closely connected to the Janissaries,
Mm-hmm.
the elite Ottoman troops.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and their beliefs drew from both Sufism and Shia Islam,
Okay.
reflecting a unique blend of traditions.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Then there's the Sanusi order,
Okay.
known for their more orthodox adherence to Islamic principles.
So you have orders connected to military groups,
Right.
others that are more traditional in their approach.
Yeah.
Quite a range.
Yeah, a real spectrum.
And their practices are equally diverse, I imagine.
They are.
Yeah.
Some chant,
Okay.
some drum,
Uh-huh.
some meditate.
Right.
It really depends on the specific order and its lineage.
But the underlying goal,
Yes.
that direct connection with the divine, remains consistent.
Precisely.
Okay.
However, it is worth noting
Yeah.
that the term dervish has been used in military and political contexts throughout history,
Oh,
sometimes inaccurately.
really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Sure. So during the Mahdist War in Sudan
Okay.
in the late 19th century,
Mm-hmm.
the British used dervish to refer to Sudanese fighters,
Okay.
often with a derogatory connotation.
So not always used to accurately describe members of Sufi orders.
That's right.
Interesting.
It became a catch-all term for the enemy,
Right.
which underscores how language can be misused and twisted to suit political agendas.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder to be critical of labels
Right.
and to delve deeper into their historical context.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
It is.
That words can be used and misused,
Yeah.
co-opted.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
Just in this first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we've learned that being a dervish is about inner transformation.
Right.
Seeking God directly.
Yes.
And that there's incredible diversity among the various orders and their practices.
There is. Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of dervishes.
In the last part, we talked about whirling and the sama ceremony and how it relates to religious ecstasy.
Yes.
But I'm still curious about what that actually means
Oh.
in the context of dervish practice. What does religious ecstasy feel like?
Right.
What are they striving for?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's essential to understand that for dervishes, the ultimate goal is to achieve a state of union with the divine,
Okay.
a merging of the self with the ultimate reality.
So it's about experiencing God directly.
Yes.
But how do their practices,
Right.
like whirling or chanting, help them get there?
Right.
What's the connection between the physical act and the spiritual experience?
Think of it this way.
Cool.
Dervishes use these rituals,
Okay.
whether it's whirling, chanting, drumming,
Right.
or even silent meditation,
Okay.
as tools to transcend their ego
Okay.
and connect with something larger than themselves.
So it's not just about the outward act itself.
No.
It's about what happens internally.
Exactly.
It's about using these practices to shift their state of consciousness.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about breaking free from the limitations of the ordinary mind, quieting the constant chatter of thoughts, and entering a state of pure presence and heightened awareness.
Okay.
It's in that stillness that they can connect with the divine.
And that's what they call religious ecstasy.
Yes.
That feeling of pure presence and connection.
Yes, and it's often described as a state of profound joy, bliss,
Wow.
and even a sense of oneness with God.
Okay.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
what stands out to you about this concept of religious ecstasy?
Um,
Does it resonate with any experiences you've had,
yeah.
even if they weren't in a specifically religious context?
You know, it's making me think about those moments
Okay.
when I'm completely absorbed in something.
Yeah.
Whether it's listening to music, being out in nature,
Right.
or even deeply engaged in work I love.
Uh-huh.
There's a sense of timelessness,
Yeah.
a feeling of being completely present
Right.
and connected to something larger than myself.
Yes.
And I can see how those experiences might offer a glimpse into what dervishes are striving for,
Right.
even if on a much smaller scale.
That's a beautiful insight. And it highlights the universality
Hmm.
of this pursuit of connection and transcendence.
Uh-huh.
It's not limited to a specific religion or practice.
Right.
It's something that humans have sought throughout history.
Right.
And dervishes offer us a glimpse into one path towards that goal.
Now, do all dervishes experience these ecstatic states?
That's a good question.
Or is it something that only the most advanced practitioners achieve?
That's a question that likely varies depending on who you ask.
Okay.
The intensity and frequency of these experiences can certainly differ
Right.
based on the individual and their level of spiritual development.
Okay.
But the pursuit of this union with the divine,
Right.
that longing to connect with something beyond the self, that's at the heart of dervish practice,
Okay.
regardless of whether they experience those ecstatic states consistently or not.
I'm starting to get a deeper sense of the depth and complexity of this tradition.
Good.
It's not just about rituals and ceremonies. It's about a profound inner journey.
Precisely. And the diversity of dervish orders reflects the many paths that one can take on this journey.
Okay, so let's delve into the history of these orders a bit.
Yeah.
Where did they all come from?
Yeah.
How did they emerge and evolve over time?
Most dervish orders trace their origins back to specific Sufi saints or teachers
Okay.
who emerged throughout Islamic history.
Okay.
These individuals often attracted followers
Right.
who were inspired by their teachings and way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And gradually, these groups evolved into more formalized orders
Okay.
with their own lineages and practices.
So they didn't just pop up all at once.
Right.
It was more of an organic process?
Exactly. They emerged gradually over centuries,
Okay.
with new orders branching out from older ones,
Okay.
each with its own unique flavor and emphasis,
Uh-huh.
while still maintaining that core connection to the Sufi tradition.
Can you give us a sense of the timeline?
Sure.
When did the earliest dervish orders begin to take shape?
Some of the earliest traces of organized Sufi brotherhoods, which can be considered the predecessors to dervish orders,
Okay.
can be found as early as the 9th and 10th centuries.
Wow, so their roots go back over 1,000 years.
Indeed.
That's amazing.
And they really started to flourish during the 12th and 13th centuries,
Okay.
a period of great intellectual and spiritual ferment in the Islamic world.
What was happening during that time that led to this surge in popularity?
Well, this was a time of significant political upheaval and social change
Okay.
in many parts of the Islamic world.
Okay.
The Mongol invasions, the Crusades, the decline of the Abbasid Caliphate,
Right.
all of these factors created a sense of uncertainty and disruption.
So people were seeking meaning and solace amidst the chaos.
Exactly. And Sufism, with its focus on inner peace, spiritual connection,
Right.
and finding solace in the midst of turmoil,
Right.
offered a powerful antidote to the anxieties of the time.
So those early Sufi brotherhoods gradually evolved into the more structured dervish orders we see today.
That's right. They spread across vast geographical areas, from North Africa to the Indian subcontinent,
Wow.
adapting to different cultures and incorporating local traditions
Right.
while maintaining that core essence of Sufi mysticism.
It's fascinating to think about how these orders have traveled and transformed across cultures
Right.
while still holding on to that common thread.
It really speaks to the adaptability and resilience of the Sufi tradition.
Okay, so let's dive into some specifics.
Mhm.
We mentioned the Mevlevi order, the whirling dervishes in the last part.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about their history?
Sure.
And what makes them unique?
Okay.
What's their story within this larger tapestry of dervish traditions?
The Mevlevi order was founded in 13th century Konya,
Okay.
in present-day Turkey,
Okay.
by followers of the Persian poet and mystic Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi.
Ah, Rumi.
Yes.
His poetry is so deeply moving and profound.
It is, and his teachings form the core of the Mevlevi order's beliefs and practices.
Okay.
His poetry explores themes of love longing
Right.
and the search for union with the divine. And these themes are reflected in the Mevlevi order's rituals and ceremonies.
So their whirling ceremony, the Sama, is a direct expression of Rumi's teachings.
Yes, the whirling is seen as a form of moving meditation,
Okay.
a way to transcend the physical world and connect with the divine through music, poetry, and movement.
And the music and poetry used in the Sama, are they specifically from Rumi's work?
While Rumi's poetry and teachings are central to the Mevlevi order,
Okay.
the music and poetry used in the Sama can come from various sources,
Okay.
often including works by other Sufi poets and composers.
Okay.
It's about creating a holistic experience.
Okay.
that evokes a sense of spiritual longing
Right.
and facilitates that journey towards the divine.
And the Mevlevi order is just one of many.
Right.
We also touched on the Bektashi order connected to the Janissaries.
Yes.
What sets them apart from the whirling dervishes?
The Bektashi order,
Yeah.
which emerged around the 14th century,
Okay.
had a unique relationship with the Ottoman military,
Okay.
particularly the elite Janissary Corps.
Okay.
Their beliefs and practices were influenced by both Sufism and Shia Islam,
Right.
creating a distinct blend of traditions that resonated with the Janissaries.
So they were more warrior monks than wandering ascetics.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
While they were certainly connected to the military,
Right.
their focus was still on spiritual development
Okay.
and the pursuit of union with the divine.
Right.
But their connection to the Janissaries definitely shaped their identity and influenced their practices.
It sounds like we're seeing a real spectrum of dervish traditions here,
We are.
each with its own unique character and history,
Yes.
yet all connected by that core thread of Sufi mysticism.
Exactly. And there are countless others.
Wow.
The Qadiri order, known for its emphasis on chanting.
Okay.
The Naqshbandi order focused on silent dhikr, or remembrance of God.
Okay.
And the Chishti order, which spread throughout India and Pakistan,
Wow.
each with its own rich history and unique set of practices.
It's mind-boggling to consider the sheer diversity of this tradition.
And yet, despite their differences,
Yeah.
they all share that fundamental goal of seeking union with the divine through direct experience, that desire to go beyond the intellect and connect with something deeper within themselves.
That's what ties them all together.
It is.
That common thread that runs through all these diverse expressions of dervish practice.
And as we delve deeper into their cultural impact in the next part,
Okay.
we'll see how this rich tradition has influenced art, music, literature,
Right.
and even politics throughout history.
I'm looking forward to exploring those connections.
Good.
But before we wrap up part 2, let's recap the key points for our listener.
Sure. We explore the concept of religious ecstasy,
Right.
that state of profound connection with the divine that dervishes strive to achieve through their various practices.
Right.
We delved into the historical roots of dervish orders,
Huh?
tracing their evolution from early Sufi brotherhoods
Right.
to the diverse array of traditions we see today.
Right.
And we highlighted just a few examples of these orders. Yes.
Each with its own unique story and emphasis.
So we've gone from understanding the core principles of dervish practice
Right.
to getting a glimpse into the history and evolution of different orders.
Yes.
And in the next part, we'll explore how all of this has impacted the world beyond the realm of spirituality.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll uncover the cultural legacy of dervishes and see how their influence continues to resonate today.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the world of dervishes.
Right.
So we've explored their beliefs,
Yeah.
their practices,
Yeah.
the history and evolution of the orders.
Right.
Now I want to shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about their cultural impact.
Okay. Their legacy.
Yeah, because they haven't existed in a vacuum.
No, they haven't.
They've had a real impact
They have.
on the societies where they flourish.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
All right.
And I think maybe a good place to start would be with architecture,
Okay.
because I've seen pictures of mosques and shrines associated with Sufism.
That are just incredibly beautiful, and they have a very unique aesthetic.
Yeah, they do.
So what sets them apart?
Well, Sufi architecture often incorporates symbolic elements
Okay.
that reflect the dervish path and their spiritual aspirations.
Okay.
It's not just about creating a functional space for worship.
Right.
It's about using architecture to evoke a sense of transcendence
Right.
in connection with the divine.
So can you give us some specific examples of how that symbolism plays out?
Sure. So the use of domes is a prominent feature in many Sufi mosques.
Okay.
The dome, with its upward curve, symbolizes the heavens,
Right.
representing the dervish's quest for transcendence
Right.
and aspiration to reach a higher state of being.
It's like the architecture itself is guiding the worshiper's gaze upward
Exactly.
towards the divine.
Yeah.
And then there are the patterns,
Yes.
the intricate geometric patterns and calligraphy that you often see
Right.
adorning the walls and the ceilings.
And those aren't merely decorative either. They
Yeah.
carry deep symbolic meaning.
Yeah. I've always been mesmerized by those patterns.
Yeah.
There's something so intricate and harmonious about them.
The geometric patterns represent the interconnectedness of all things,
Okay.
reflecting the Sufi belief in the unity of existence.
Okay.
The idea that everything in the universe is connected to a single source.
It's like a visual representation of their spiritual philosophy.
It is, and the calligraphy,
Yeah.
often featuring verses from the Quran or Sufi poetry,
Right.
is used to evoke a sense of spiritual contemplation
Okay.
and connection with the divine word.
So these buildings are not just places of worship.
No, they're not.
They're works of art
Yes,
that express these profound spiritual ideas
they are.
and guide the visitor on a journey of inner discovery.
Beautifully put.
And then there's Sufi music,
Yes.
which is known for its haunting melodies and ecstatic rhythms.
Right.
And it has this power to really move people
It does.
on a very deep level.
Yeah, very emotional.
So what makes it so captivating?
Yeah. Well, Sufi music is intricately intertwined with Dervish practices.
Okay.
It's not simply entertainment.
Right.
It's a vehicle for spiritual expression
Okay.
and a powerful tool for achieving altered states of consciousness.
So similar to the whirling in that sense.
Yes.
It's a way of transcending the ordinary state of mind.
Right.
Connecting with something beyond the self.
Exactly. The music, often accompanied by chanting and poetry,
Okay.
creates an atmosphere of heightened emotion
Uh-huh.
and spiritual longing,
Okay.
helping dervishes to connect to the divine
Right.
and experience those ecstatic states we discussed earlier.
So it's like the music itself becomes a form of prayer,
Yeah.
a way of communicating with the divine through sound
Right.
and rhythm.
And there are different types of Sufi music as well.
Oh, really?
Yes, the styles and traditions vary depending on the region and the specific dervish order.
Interesting.
Yeah, so for example,
Yeah.
Qawwali,
Okay.
a form of devotional music popular in South Asia, is characterized by its soaring vocals, rhythmic clapping,
Uh-huh.
and improvisational nature.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And what about the music of the whirling dervishes?
Yeah.
The Mevlevi order.
Right.
What sets their musical traditions apart?
Well, the Mevlevi order has a distinct musical tradition
Okay.
that features instruments like the new flute, known for its haunting and ethereal sound,
Okay.
and the kudum drum,
Okay.
which provides a grounding and rhythmic bass.
Okay.
The music is carefully orchestrated to create a sense of mystical ascent,
Okay.
mirroring the whirling dervish's journey towards spiritual enlightenment.
It's like the music itself is telling a story,
Yeah.
guiding the listener on this journey.
Yes, and we can't forget about the impact of dervishes on literature either.
Right, because Rumi is a perfect example
Yes, he is.
of a Sufi poet whose work is
Yeah.
just filled with these profound images
Right.
and themes of love, longing, union with the divine.
Yeah, his poetry is incredibly moving.
Yeah, it speaks to something very deep
It does.
in the human spirit.
And he's just one example.
Right.
There have been countless Sufi poets and writers
Right.
who have used their craft to express their spiritual experiences and insights.
And their words continue to resonate
They do.
with people today.
Yes, they do.
So from architecture to music to literature,
Yeah,
dervishes have left an undeniable mark on human culture.
they have.
And their legacy extends beyond the arts as well.
It does.
Dervish orders have also played important social and political roles throughout history,
They have.
which kind of challenges that stereotype
Right.
of the mystic who's solely focused on their own spiritual journey,
Right.
disconnected from the realities of life.
Right.
Some dervish orders have been very involved in social welfare,
They have.
providing education, healthcare support for the poor.
Yes, very active in their communities.
So it's not just about seeking union with the divine,
Yeah.
it's about bringing that divine light into the world.
Yeah, living those principles.
Yeah. And making a difference in the lives of others.
Exactly.
And historically, some dervish orders have also had a political impact as well,
Yeah.
acting as advisors to rulers
Right.
or mobilizing their followers to support different causes.
Yeah, so they've been both spiritual guides
Right.
and agents of social and political change.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, really complex legacy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
what would you say is the most important takeaway?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that dervishes are far more than just the whirling image that we often see.
Right.
It's a rich and multifaceted tradition
Yeah.
encompassing profound spiritual beliefs,
Yeah.
diverse practices,
Right.
and a deep commitment to service and social justice.
A very holistic tradition.
Yes,
Yeah.
and one that has inspired countless individuals
Right.
to seek a deeper connection with the divine
Right.
and to bring that divine light into the world.
It's a journey that extends far beyond whirling
Because,
into art, music, literature, social action.
yes, it's really a testament to the power of the human spirit
Absolute.
to seek meaning, connection,
Yeah.
and transcendence in all aspects of life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been a fascinating exploration,
It has.
and I hope our listener has gained a newfound appreciation for the profound wisdom and beauty
Absolutely.
of the Dervish tradition.
Until next time, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.